You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, and I'm joined this week by a whole cast of Coaster101 characters because we've got breaking news. We weren't going to do a show this week, but with it, news breaking on a Monday, we have to do a show this week. So first, I'm going to introduce Shane Joseph. Shane, how are you?
I'm doing good, Andrew. How are you?
I'm great. And second of all, we got Nick Weisenberger. Nick, what's going on?
Oh, not much.
And last but certainly not least, because this is his home park that we're talking about this week, we had to bring him out of podcast retirement, semi-retirement. Eric Woolley, how are you?
I'm terrible, Andrew. My home park is closing. That's the news, guys.
Yes. So if you've been living under a rock for the past 12-ish hours, I don't know, this will come out at some point Tuesday
One of Andrew's
morning.
weird rocks that everyone who isn't a giant nerd lives under.
Yeah.
It's like the people that don't know what the Knights in White Satin ride is.
Yeah, but aren't those the people who listen to our podcast? I'm playing to the audience here. That's what I'm doing. But it was announced earlier today by Cedar Fair that they have sold the land under California's Great America, their park just outside of San Francisco. The park will cease to exist in some time in the next 11 years, which seems like a really arbitrary number. But Eric, you actually did some more digging into this. Can you run us through a little bit of kind of what has happened with this, I guess selling, not purchase, but selling?
Yeah. So the announcement is basically the Cedar Fair, who owns Great America and a bunch of our favorite parks, has sold the land under California's Great America, like you said, to real estate development company in the Bay Area. They, in the press release, they then said that the park would continue to lease, or Cedar Fair would continue to lease the land and operate it as a theme park for up to 11 years. We found basically a documentation that they have to file, I think, when they're big real estate deals like this from public companies, that had a little more detail into that. So the deal includes a lease back that is for 6 years, where Cedar Fair is leasing it back for 6 years, with an option for Cedar Fair to extend that lease for 5 more years. There also appeared to be an option for the company that Cedar Fair is selling the park to terminate the lease earlier. The only detail I could find was that they have to give 2 years notice to do that. I would guess there might also be some payment thing, although I don't actually know if that's the case. But basically sometime in the next, and what Cedar Fair said in the announcement, that basically they would stop operating the park after the lease is done. So sometime in the next 2 to 11 years, I guess maybe there's a chance that they could extend the lease further after that. That seems very unlikely. But in the next 2 to 11 years, California's Great America will close down. A little more context on the background. So the park Cedar Fair actually just bought the land that the park is on back in 2019. It had previously been owned by the city of Santa Clara, where the park is located. And then I think there was some change in state of California rule that basically said cities couldn't own commercial property like that or something. So basically the state was forced to sell it. Cedar Fair bought it. At the time, we were all very excited because Cedar Fair had also recently won rezoning approval for the park to let it expand and build taller rides. And then they bought the land and everyone was like, oh, they're going to now really start investing in the park, and said they got a deal that they couldn't turn down. It is for a very large amount of money for a company that has not been doing great financially during the COVID-19 pandemic and with their reopening. So a very sensible business deal for the park. I think it's $300-something million is how much they're getting for the land that they paid, I think, $150 million for 3 years ago.
That's not a bad return on investment. Yeah, it's $310 million. It's a company called Prologis. I don't know.
Sounds like a real estate developer.
Yep, they're Bay Area based logistics real estate company with a lease agreement, as Eric mentioned. But we're gonna play a little let's see, what's the word I want to say here? We're going to be vultures, as Eric put before the show. We're going to play the hypothetical vulture game here because Cedar Fair, they did not own the land, but they do presumably own all of the rides within California's Great America and South Bay Shores, the newly redesigned water park. But we want to go through a little bit and just kind of play devil's advocate a little bit here from the park, kind of pick from the remains and take a look at the park's lineup and see where we think attractions could go if they end up in the scrap heap, if they end up as parts for other rides, if they end up to other parks in the Cedar Fair chain. We just wanted to kind of have a little fun with it, see what it is. Eric, I'm sorry as you're just kind of sobbing.
Yeah, you're a bunch of monsters. I will say that I think my best guess is that they probably will keep the park running as a park for 5 to 6 more years. I don't think Cedar Fair will exercise the option. That seems unlikely based on how expensive it is to run things here. So none of these are gonna. Well, I would be very shocked if any of these rides got picked up next to off season and moved somewhere. But we also don't know. Cedar Fair might be trying to sell other parks too, which I think, not too long ago, they had tried to sell several of these parks. They actually tried to sell Great America back in 2011, and I think a couple other of their parks, and that didn't happen. But
yeah, I think what they try to sell it for then $50 million or something like that. So I think they're doing okay financially for sure. But we're gonna just kind of play just hypotheticals here. Again, we don't know anything. We don't know if this is going to be like a Kentucky Kingdom situation where they go in under the cover of night and just start ripping things up by the bolts. We don't know. But again, this is a podcast. We're here to have a little bit of fun with it. But let's go with some of the roller coasters. I want to ask you guys. We'll start with one. California.
We want to start with the most likely to move and the best.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Shane and Nick, I'll bring you in. I feel like Eric and I have been talking a lot, but if you guys had to move Railblazer, because that's presumably what you're talking about, Eric.
Yeah.
If you guys had to move Railblazer to another Cedar Fair park, presumably, or if it wasn't going to Cedar Fair Park, that wouldn't really make sense. But where would you guys see as the best landing place for Railblazer? And Shane, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so this was a pretty easy one for me. I would absolutely put this at Dorney Park. I think that if this happens, if they put Railblazer in Dorney Park, I think Dorney Park could become sort of the next Carowinds for Cedar Fair because it's in a great area. It could put up some serious competition with Hershey Park if they really start building it out. I think a single rail is a great place to start, especially because you have a similar one at Six Flags Great Adventure. It's very different. It has not gotten as many good reviews either as the other clone single rails. So that could also be a reason to kind of want to have some competition there. But I mean, if you look at what Dorney Park has, they have a hyper, a launch coaster, a B&M invert, and a B&M floorless. That's a pretty good lineup for any park. So if they decide to start building on that, especially with an RMC, I think we could see some really big things out of Dorney Park, and this would be a really good first addition to that.
Nick, what about you? Do you have any thoughts on the future location of Railblazer?
Yeah, I think the smaller mid-sized Cedar Fair parks are all looking their chops at this one. Like all the coaster enthusiasts their home park is one of these mid-sized Cedar Fair parks that hasn't gotten a new coaster in 10 plus years. I think all of them are going to be begging to get this ride. So that's Dorney Park, Michigan's Adventure, Worlds of Fun, Valley Fair. I think are probably the 4 top parks that I'd like to see it to go to one of those and give those fan bases something to look forward to.
Okay, yeah, I think I like Shane's thoughts on Dorney, but I want to also kind of throw in just a potential of Worlds of Fun, and I know the ever-present rumor at Worlds of Fun is that they're going to get a new coaster, and that's been happening ever since I visited the park like 3 years ago. There's like persistent rumors that Worlds of Fun is going to get something, and then they never do because, no offense, they're Worlds of Fun. But you know, back in the day, they had this coaster, Zambezi Zinger, that was a Schwarzkopf jumbo jet, kind of that single rail, everybody sitting in a line, kind of like your Space Mountain, or on a single rail. And I think this could be a good kind of spiritual successor for Zambezi Zinger. I mean, you could call it two Zambezi, two Zinger, or whatever, we Fast and Furious, however we want to do this. But I think Worlds of Fun would be a really good spot for it. And selfishly, I know this will never happen, but I feel like the Dinosaurs Alive plot at Carowinds is right there next to Afterburn. You could definitely fit a pretty good sized roller coaster back there. It's a lot of land, but I don't think it's at the top of the priority list for Carowinds right now. That's my thought. But Eric, as sad as you are to see it go, do you have any thoughts as to where Railblazer could end up?
I think they should scrap it so no one else ever gets to ride it again. That's my feeling towards all of these. Yeah, I mean, I think like Nick said, any of those kind of, I mean, I think most of the way to placate people who complain about not having gotten a coaster in however many years at Worlds of Fun or Dorney or Valley Fair or even Michigan's Adventure would be to deliver one of these, and this seems like one. This like Railblazer is definitely the easiest to pick up and move. I think Shane, it was interesting that you had you mentioned that like there's a single rail pretty close by at Great Adventure, because I had seen some people on the internet after this news came out like looking at plots at Knott's Berry Farm where Railblazer could easily fit in, like the Pony Express site at Knott's. Knott's is a space constrained park, and I had thought like, oh well, like the new Wonder Woman single rail is opening at Six Flags Magic Mountain. They're not really in competition because they're pretty far apart, but like, would that affect what Cedar Fair does with it if there are like similar rides somewhere? I think actually Knott's would be a fine spot for it if they aren't getting whatever plans for hypercoasters or whatever are always floating around with Knott's. But it does seem more likely that, yeah, one of those middle parks would get it. Unless they also all get sold off in the next 5 years by Cedar Fair. So Michigan's Adventure isn't going to get it. They're not going to spend money to move a ride to Michigan's Adventure.
That's fair. That's fair.
Sorry, Michigan's Adventure.
It's true. There's a a couple other roller coasters here at California's Great America, in addition to Railblazer, and it's not unheard of to move a wooden coaster. But the park's next newest wooden coaster is Gold Striker, which opened in 2013. Do you guys think there is a future for Gold Striker, or is it going to meet the same fate as the Conneaut Lake Blue Streak and just burn in a mysterious insurance fire?
And I'll start with this because this is the one that I think I'll be saddest about, because I think you're right. It's hard to move wooden coasters much more so than something with like where you just gotta kind of unbolt the steel. But like Gold Striker is maybe my favorite coaster at the park, and I think it's one of the best GCI coasters. So like it would be very sad to have it disappear. I'm hoping that they can find a spot. Again, I think one of those mid-size Cedar Fair parks would make the most sense for it. Although it's also like, I'm trying to think, are there other Cedar Fair parks that don't have like of the big ones that don't have a like recent-ish wooden coaster? Does King's Dominion have a modern wooden coaster?
No, not really.
They've got Racer 75 and Grizzly, but they've also got Twisted Timbers, which used to be a wooden coaster.
So like maybe it's one of those, but I would think that is unlikely, but I hope that they're able to save it or reuse it. I think the point that the other most likely is like, well, the trains and maybe some of the parts could get reused on a new wooden coaster somewhere.
Yeah. Nick, you have any thought? Or go, Shane, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I was just going to say maybe since it's so new, that's the only thing that's keeping me from saying that they're just going to use it for parts, because it's not even 10 years old at this point. Granted, by the time they actually start moving rides, if that's what they're doing, it's going to be 5 or 6 years down the line, most likely. But I would like to see this ride, if they can, move to Carowinds. I think this would be a great replacement for Hurler. I mean, the best replacement obviously would be an RMC, but I don't think they're going that direction because I think it would have happened already. So I think that Hurler can hang on for a couple more years. Then they can start moving Gold Striker down there, because apart from being fairly new, it's also people really, really like the ride. Obviously, Eric especially can speak on this firsthand. But I think it would be a shame if they just either used it for parts or got rid of it entirely. And I think it would fill a spot in Carowinds' lineup that Hurler is going to open when it eventually closes.
Yeah, I wouldn't lie to you if I had said that I've gone on Google Maps, plotted out everything, and Gold Striker you can fit in the space currently occupied by both Vortex and Nighthawk very nicely. It's kind of tough to do it's not really unheard of. Again, Gwazi did it at Busch Gardens Tampa, but a big wooden coaster right there at the front of the park. I know Holiday World does it, but they're still kind of on the perimeter. But I would love to see it at Carowinds. I don't know if that's physically possible. I don't know. If wooden coasters get moved, I think of like Wild One at Six Flags, Six Flags America outside of DC. They said it was moved, but was it really moved, or did they just get a bunch of the same, like different wood and just rebuild it from the original blueprints? So I don't know.
That I don't know, but they did something similar at the Great Escape too, with their Comet, which is actually pretty good. So if they can do something similar to that, I think that would be a big win for whoever gets this.
Yeah. And Nick, what about you?
I love me some Mystic Timbers. So I think there's quite a few Cedar Fair parks, even some of the bigger ones, that could use a modern wooden roller coaster. Like even Cedar Point, Carowinds, King's Dominion, Dorney, any of those parks I could see building a new ground up GCI, even if it's not Mystic Timber size, but like a smaller one, or like Switchback, where it's a shuttle wooden coaster or something like that. But then using the trains, the chain lift, the lift hill motor, maybe even some of the wood they can recycle. I don't know, but just using parts from it. But yeah, either see them build a new ground up and using parts, or the existing parts going to Valley Fair or Worlds of Fun. But I don't see them like relocating the entire coaster or anything like that.
I actually forgot about this until you just brought up the idea right now. But Dorney, I think there was plans or something.
There was rumors of them
published of there was actual. Like I remember seeing some kind of blueprint or something for them to get a shuttle coaster. So if that does eventually happen, they could at least salvage some things and use that for the shuttle coaster.
Yeah, and it seems like Cedar Fair as a whole is not building any major investments or any big
right.
Steel coasters lately, but like a smaller family wood coaster, and then if you can reuse these parts, that would help save money. So I could see like that going to a number of parks.
I love it. And we'll talk. We got to talk the B&Ms in the room right now. California's Great America has two of them, obviously. Patriot, which originally opened as a stand-up in 1991, was rethemed to Patriot and given the floorless conversion, same as Rougarou and Mantis at Cedar Point in 2017. They've also got Flight Deck, which, Eric, was that named Top Gun at one point?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
That was our Top Gun.
Got it. And it was a B&M invert that opened in 1993. B&M has a really, really good track record in the industry. They rarely close at this point. I think the only B&M maybe I can think of off the top of my head that has ever closed has been Dueling Dragons or Dragon Challenge, however you call it, at Islands of Adventure. And that's just because they, had to build Hagrid and needed that space. But do you guys think there is a space at, one of these bigger Cedar Fair parks, or even the mid-size to smaller Cedar Fair parks, for a newish refurbished floorless coaster, or a B&M invert? Shane.
So for the floorless for Patriot, I mean, if anything, I would probably say, Michigan's Adventure and Valley Fair are pretty much interchangeable, I feel like, with the two B&Ms. I didn't include Worlds of Fun just because they already have a B&M invert, so obviously the invert's not going to go there, and I don't think they would put in another B&M. So if I had to choose, I would say that the Floorless would go to Michigan's Adventure, and the invert would go to Valley Fair. But yeah, I really don't know, especially with those smaller parks. I could also see them start to sell them off. So this one's kind of a toss-up for me because there's no other parks really that I could see. Most of them already have either a Floorless or an invert, but I don't think they're just going to scrap them. So these, I think, are going to be the two most interesting to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they're both on the smaller side, size-wise. Patriot, I mean, I think we've discussed whether the the stand up to floorless conversions, how well this worked. Patriot is not a ride that I think is a particularly good coaster, but if you had a small park that doesn't have a floorless coaster and you're trying to fill out a lineup, it can work for that so that there is something new. I think Flight Deck is much more interesting because it is a short-ish coaster. It's not, but it's a little bit shorter than Afterburn. It's not a ton, and is we've talked about before. The B&M inverts managed to hold up despite being 30 years old as really good rides. It is still really fun, and so especially I think you give that a new paint job and move it to a place like Michigan's Adventure, and suddenly it's a big deal. They're getting what is a good ride and something that certainly can attract more locals. So I think that seems like the more likely to it will find a spot at something like Valley Fair or Michigan's Adventure. Patriot, they might do it just because they have it and B&Ms are easy to move, but wouldn't move it. That's definitely the lowest tier of these top coasters that is getting moved somewhere if it gets moved.
Yeah.
Do you guys think there's any possibility that they would sell them to a non-Cedar Fair park rather than just get rid of them if is not a spot at one of their parks?
I think there's always the possibility there. I think back to when Geauga Lake closed that a lot of the Geauga Lake attractions ended up at newly purchased Cedar Fair parks. Mm-hmm. So I know, let's see, what was it? Vertical Velocity, was that one? Maybe.
Yeah, it was Superman, so. Then Steel.
Yeah.
Venom.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one I'm thinking.
X-Flight went to Kings Island.
Yeah, X-Flight
Dominator to King's Dominion.
Serial Thriller to Michigan's Adventure.
Yeah, so there's definite precedent here when Cedar Fair kind of compresses their park lineup a little bit, that some of the higher thrill attractions do make it to other Cedar Fair parks to kind of breathe new life into them. And yeah, Dominator, very good example of that. But at this point, before this broke today, I didn't foresee Cedar Fair selling the park to begin with. So really anything is possible at this point. I don't know. It could end up anywhere. And there are more parks out there. I think Lost Island is a good example out in Iowa. And, we talked to the Weber Group on the podcast a couple weeks ago, but all of their major coasters are transplanted from other parks. So if they wanted to get into the B&M game, there could be two, we're not going to call them gently used. We're going to call them used, certified pre-owned B&M roller coasters that could be on the market anytime soon.
That's what I'm wondering. Is it even going to be worth it to move the coasters at all? Has the track reached the end of its service life, or is it getting close? Because we've seen a couple other B&Ms now, with Incredible Hulk at Islands of Adventure had a complete retrack, and I'm hearing that Nemesis at Outland Towers is due for a complete retrack, and that one opened in '94. That's a B&M inverted coaster, and Flight Deck opened in '93. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
So, and do you know, Eric, has it had any track replaced that you know of?
Not that I know of. It's gotten repainted a few times, but I also know this is a few years ago. Whenever the last time did an off-season tour of the park, talking to their maintenance team, they've basically have said the only maintenance they need to do on it is sort of take apart the trains each off season, rebuild them, and otherwise it is very it's a very reliable coaster, which I guess I mean those are a couple examples, Nick, but I think if you also look at like all of the Batman the rides at the Six Flags parts that are from the early 90s, Afterburn, Andrew, must be also mid 90s or something, right?
1999.
Yeah. So like I who knows what the service life of those B&M inverts are. I mean, they seem to, based on what I have talked to people about, they seem to need very little upkeep even at 25, 30 years old. Whether that means they can go to 40 or 50 years old, hard to say, but a lot cheaper than buying a new one, I would think.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I think it definitely, again, B&M, highly reliable rides. Definitely, I think they should be able to find a new home, be it a Cedar Fair park or another park out there. And again, this is not a new thing. I think back to White Lightning at Carowinds, which is way pre Cedar Fair. It might even be pre Paramount era at this point, but it's currently operating at a park in South Africa. So there are roller coasters out there that you can find that came from major chain parks and just somehow end up elsewhere. But let's talk about the other coasters that may or may not end up. Obviously, you've got Demon, the park's oldest coaster, opened in 1976. It's an Aero Looper. You've got Grizzly, which is a Curtis D. Summers wooden coaster, opened in 86. You've got Woodstock Express, which is an Intamin, did open in 1987, so it's 35 years old. That's how the math works. 35, and they've got Psycho Mouse, which did open in 2001, and Aero Dynamics Wild Mouse, and they've also got Lucy's Krabby Cabbies, kind of just a kiddie off-the-shelf coaster. Do you guys see a future for any of these anywhere? And I've got a bold prediction for the Psycho Mouse, but before I talk, do you guys have any thoughts, or are all of these coasters destined for the great scrap heap in the sky?
I think probably a good amount of them are not gonna survive. Aero Looper, Demon, maybe they'll use it for parts, but I think any excuse that they can have to get rid of an Aero Looper without sort of a fan uprising, I think they're going to take. So just based on what they've been doing recently, so I think that would be a good thing to do with that.
Which other Cedar Fair parks have Aero Loopers? Valley
I think
Fair,
it's just King's Dominion, Valley Fair,
Carowinds.
Oh yeah,
Cedar Point.
Oh yeah,
Corkscrew. So there is a good number of them out there still.
So they could use it for parts, but I don't know if those rides are still going to be there 6+ years from now. So we'll see. If they are, I would say probably use some parts from that. Grizzly, same thing. If they can use the parts for any of the other family Woodies they have, maybe that's the case. But any other ride, I probably would not see surviving.
I would say even if they weren't selling enclosed in the park, they should scrap Grizzly. So I don't think it'll get moved. should have scrapped it a long time ago if they weren't going to RMC it.
Fair.
I think the one that seems most likely of all of those is probably the Wild Mouse, just because it's easy to. It seems like it would be easy to pick up and move. Right? It's a square concrete pad. Put it at some park that doesn't have a Wild Mouse. I'm sure one of the Cedar Fair parks doesn't have a Wild Mouse and could use one for some reason.
Okay, Michigan's Adventure actually does have one.
The ride that I would have guessed most likely to go there.
And it's actually named Psycho Mouse, so it's like it would be just a complete up and move and replacement at that point.
Well, I think a lot of people have said that that's like the longest line in the park, so maybe they'll put it right next to it, double the capacity.
It's a terrible operations capacity at Great America. Make it have probably the longest line here too.
There you go.
All right, here's my hot take on Psycho Mouse. Gilroy Gardens. It's going right up the road in Santa Clara. It's adding a third roller coaster to that park. It's still family focused. It would be probably the tallest coaster they have at that point, but I think Gilroy Gardens could use a new roller coaster. They haven't gotten a new coaster, and let's look real quick. Gilroy Gardens' last new roller coaster was 2001. It has been
I
21
think
years.
that's when it opened, basically.
It is. It is 100% when it opened. So, Gilroy
Yeah.
Gardens, I'm on the Psycho Mouse to Gilroy Gardens train. We're going to call it the Garlic Cheese Mouse, and it's going to stink, and it's going to be awesome.
That's likely. I didn't make this prediction because I didn't know the park existed, but now having looked it up, I think that might be a good fit here, and it'll be an easy move.
Very small park, very beautiful. Lots of like nice landscaping. Operated by Cedar Fair, which I think feels like it's unlikely Cedar Fair will be operating it anytime soon. Yeah. Not owned by Cedar Fair though, only operated by them. I think
that's true,
if I remember right, unless that's changed.
It is the city of Gilroy, California, does operate it, but so, who knows? Anyway,
I have a feeling they're not getting a new coaster, but I'll buy you a beer if you end up being right on that, Andrew.
It sounded really good about 30 seconds ago. But we've come through the coasters. There's a handful of thrill rides and other rides at California's Great America. Is there anything that sticks out to you guys that could end up at another park? And I've got a couple that I want to talk about real quick. And the first is Tiki Twirl, which is a Zamperla disco. I think this would go really well in the new Jungle Expedition at King's Dominion. I think it's an area of the park. It's got 2 roller coasters, and who knows whatever else is going to happen in Volcano. But it's light on flat rides, and yes, enthusiasts, I'm calling a disco a flat ride because that's what it is. But I think you could come up with a way to kind of fit this somewhere in the Jungle X area. If it's tucked back behind the cafe that used to be Outer Hanks that I can never, Jungle Outpost Cafe, Jungle Expedition Eatery, something like that. I don't remember exactly what the name is. Sorry, King's Dominion, but I think you could put a disco there and it still kind of fits the theme. I mean, you could give it its own animal temple or anything like that. But I think that would work well there. The other attraction at Great America that I would take to King's Dominion is the new water slide complex that they got as part of the South Bay Shores renovation, retheming, and in recent years. Eric, I think when did that open? 2021, 20?
It opened last summer. The expanded water park.
Yeah, so that's a multi-slide tower. It's similar to the pirate one at Carowinds. Again, I don't go to water
parks. Got the drop slides and stuff.
Yeah, it's got 2 drop slides and
another layer with some other stuff. Yeah.
It's got 6 slides. King's Dominion doesn't have that, and I think King's Dominion is a park that their water park recently expanded for families with Coconut Shores, and I think they could also use a new thrilling attraction. And these water slides are 2 or 3 years old at this point, so it's just, I think those could go to King's Dominion. The only other thing that I'm seeing that I think it would be a dumb decision to do, but could be ideal, would be to swap out the Carowinds drop tower with the Great America drop tower and add 50 feet so the Carowinds drop tower is not as embarrassing when you compare it to other drop towers.
I am shocked to learn that Great America's drop tower is taller than someone else's drop tower.
Oh my gosh, I looked this up today. It was hang on.
Well, Andrew, I'll let you look that up while I can comment on other rides that I think should have a home.
Yes.
So you can mute yourself and then do some Google searching. I think the things that I most hope find another home are the handful of original 1976 Marriott era flat rides. There's a Schwarzkopf Enterprise. Great America, it's called Orbit. I feel like, Nick, maybe you remember this too. In sometime within the last 5 to 10 years, Cedar Fair went on a run of adding historic flat rides back to parks. I know Carowinds had a big one of their expansions was adding a bunch of those.
Yeah, so they went on a tour of Europe looking for the old rides to bring in.
So now they have some. They've got ones. They're I feel like the Enterprise, they have a Schwarzkopf Calypso, a Byron Curve, oh, if Cedar Fair is still interested in some of that, like maintaining or adding old original era rides. They've got them. There's an Aero classic cars. Or was it Kings Island a few years ago? Brought back antique cars. Like, well, okay, here's another set of antique cars. What park needs antique cars? So, like, I'm hoping that some of those maybe get saved and might be interesting. The other, like, relatively recent flat rides, I feel like they would be able to sell off. The Chance Frisbee, they have, and they've got. I think they're adding a scrambler ride this year. Presumably, they would find somewhere to send that afterwards. I think the other thing that I wish they could save somehow is the Carousel Columbia, their 1976 double-decker carousel that is, I think, technically the tallest carousel in the world because it's 1 foot taller than the one at Six Flags Great America. And so, like, that seems like something that is a very beautiful and iconic enough ride that it would be, like, very sad if it doesn't find its way somewhere, whether it's a museum or another park.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back from the Google searching, and the drop tower at Carowinds is 174 feet tall. The drop tower at California's Great America, 224 feet tall. So it would be another 50 feet, which is
wow.
pretty impressive by drop tower standards.
174 feet only. That seems so tiny at a park with rides like Fury.
Why not just add another 30 feet to hit that 200-foot?
Yeah.
Just give me the top of the California's Great America drop tower then.
Just add it on.
Yeah. It's like when Kentucky Kingdom did the April Fool's joke that's like, for every 10 retweets, we will add 10 feet to the drop tower slide. So one thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, and what I thought might be a good addition for Kings Island of all places, is, Eric, do you think it would be possible to kind of uproot and report the Mass Effect attraction that took over their action theater?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's you'd be gutting the theater, but that is still the screen work on that. I'm now blanking on the name of the company that did the screen. I think we interviewed them when they did both that and Plants vs. Zombies at Carowinds. The 3D on that, I still think is one of the clearest, 3D screens I have ever seen in a theme park. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much is the action theater at Kings Island, is it just saying empty?
Yeah,
like most action theaters. Yeah. I mean, it does seem like, how hard would it be for them to basically gut the theater and move it to another if the buildings are presumably the same structurally. That does seem like something that might be feasible. I have no idea how hard it is to take out the screens or projectors or any of that, but it does seem like, since the structures exist somewhere else, if they don't get knocked down in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I remember reading your article, and I think it was definitely kind of a cutting edge at the time when it opened back in whenever that was, 2017.
Something like that. 2016, I think.
Yeah, 2016. It seemed pretty cutting edge at the time, and I think if you kind of plus it up with modern technology, I feel like all of those action theaters are pretty much the same, and the one at Kings Island is just kind of tucked in between the two turnarounds of Racer, which I think it's just sat there kind of vacant storage for several years. So I think it'd be a good addition for Kings Island for sure. Shane, anything you can think of a attraction that you would want to move that we haven't talked about already?
Nothing much. I think that, kind of like what you said, I was thinking something similar to the project that they were talking about a couple years ago with the classic flat rides, kind of bringing some of those in. I think it's, if they want to keep doing that, they don't have to go to Europe to get them now. So I think if that's something they wanted to do, this would be a pretty easy place to get them. But other than that, it's just filling in the gaps of, if something's worth moving, they're just going to look at which parks don't have that, and if they can also fit them, I think they're probably, hopefully at least, going to try and move as many as they can without just scrapping them. So I think that a good amount are hopefully going to be put to use again.
I like it. Nick, anything else?
I don't think so, but I think it's safe to say that we're assuming they're not going to be getting any new rides. So this puts the the lid on ever getting the rumored hypercoaster.
Yeah.
Actually, I guess it was not rumored; it was planned. It was originally supposed to be Megabyte before it was moved to Kings Island, became Orion.
Yep.
But I guess that is officially dead.
Yeah, I think I had emailed the Cedar Fair corporate communications with some questions after the press release came out, and they responded with a line about how they were going to continue to have live entertainment and food events and make those investments in the park, and very pointedly did not mention anything about attractions. So I don't think, although they're building a new scrambler, putting in a new scrambler ride, so that's, I think, supposed to open next month or something, sometime soon.
Wait, it hasn't opened yet?
I don't think so.
Oh,
well, unless I missed it. I haven't been to the park since April.
that's fair. Okay. Go ahead, Shane.
I think it is nice that they're at least going to keep doing events. Like, it's not just like they're completely just literally like letting the park go.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, at least as of now, I should say.
That's what they claim, yeah.
They're planning. Yes. If they do the events, I think that would be nice. Because I think it'll be easy for them to kind of just, take their foot off the gas. And now that the deal is signed, just ignore it for the next couple of years. Yeah. But I think it would be nice if they did at least keep some events going to keep the park fresh.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously, I know they kept Winterfest, right? Did they get rid of Winterfest? Is that still going on?
Don't remember if it happened last year. I think it did. Yes, I think it did happen last year, and it hadn't the previous because of COVID. But
gotcha. Yeah, I think it was Worlds of Fun that got rid of Winterfest.
They had canceled the Halloween haunt for this year, which I think partly probably because of operating costs.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I want to add one more thing here, and I know I just say this because I know Don Helbig loves the mountain gliders at Carowinds. So what I am going to suggest here is that the mountain gliders at Carowinds go back to Kings Island, which is their original home. That would be a really good 50th anniversary present for them, and then bring the new flying scooters from California's Great America to Carowinds. Cedar Fair has proven that is a good pipeline for them. Obviously, that is where Nighthawk, Borg Assimilator, Stealth, whatever you call it, there's past roads traveled between Great America and Carowinds with attractions. So I think I've asked for like 4 or 5 different rides, and maybe I'm just showing my home park bias here, but
I do like the idea of that they might remove Nighthawk and then replace it with another ride that came from Great America, and just like keep that spot as the Great America legacy spot.
I like it. I'm on it. That is a good idea. We should probably talk to somebody at the park to see if they can make that happen, because although they put a lot of money into Nighthawk this off season and it hasn't even opened yet, I think they're upgrading the ride control system. They've painted it. So fortunately or unfortunately, I think it's going to continue to operate for a little bit, but who knows at this point. But Vortex could go. I wouldn't mind that. Anyway.
You can replace it with Patriot.
Perfect. It's exactly what they need.
Oh, God, help me. That's going to do it for this week's episode of the Coaster101 podcast. If you're unaware, we have a website where we actually cover the news of the land of California's Great America being sold today. That website is Coaster101.com. We are also on all forms of social media at Coaster101. And if you're listening to this podcast, even though it's a day late than we typically come out, make sure you like, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, ask your friends what they think of California's Great America so they can give you a really puzzled look and say, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Also, thanks as always to Justin Mabry of JM Music Design for our theme music. And guys, this was fun. RIP in advance to California's Great America, but we will talk to y'all again soon. See ya.
Bye.